So the first thing I wanted to ask you about is Zack Starkey. There has been a lot of shenanigans around Zack Starkey lately, and I
He's
know
having he's having a moment, isn't he?
he kind of is, right? On the one hand, way to turn getting fired into
Yeah.
a lot of notoriety. Good on you.
Yep.
Um, have you had any insight into the whole like rehiring and then refiring thing?
I think it just no, I don't have any actual insight other than as any other observer. I think it just shows how far apart Pete and Roger are on a normal basis, on a regular basis. That things just get ahead of steam that one guy says or does, and the other guy doesn't even hear about it, and then all of a sudden, they're cleaning up after each other, or however that would go. It's just it sounds horrible to say this. I love the Who. I love everything they've ever done. It's like, guys, there's a reason this is the farewell tour. It should have probably happened a while ago. It's just not. I
It
mean,
did happen a while
they're
ago. It happened in
yeah,
1986.
they're on such opposite sides of everything. Those two, and then in the middle of it, here comes Zach. I think it's great that Zach has gotten all this attention right now. He's just been he's just had this incredible career, great life, doing everything the right way, great drummer, goes without saying. And then at a moment in time when he does have the perspective, he just had fun with it. I just thought the whole thing was hilarious. And I'm sure he was hurt by it and annoyed and confused and bewildered and all that. But he also has just been able to make fun of the whole thing. And I think it's been hilarious.
Now, the first thing that popped into my head was because as soon as it happened, he also released a song with another band and Noel Gallagher guesting on it.
Hmm.
And that's when I realized he was in Oasis. And
Yeah.
I was thinking in the back of my head, I'll bet he had an offer for that Oasis reunion, but he's the Who's guy, so it wasn't even going to be an option. And then here the Who are firing him on the eve of Oasis
Hmm.
huge reunion tour, which clearly he could have pivoted to, right? If he'd
Yeah,
known.
I mean, I've heard that they had Joey was their choice the whole time at the same
Okay.
time, but anything we don't hear directly from the mouths of the principals, it's all just could be easily denied. But the people I know in that world said that it was just going to be it was Joey Wonker like forever. So who knows? But I mean, Zach certainly would have been on the short list when they were trying to figure it out.
So you think Zach saying that publicly is just kind of keeping this press cycle going and not like prep for a lawsuit?
Oh yeah, I don't think I think he's just I think if he did 6 interviews in a week, they'd say 6 different things. He's just having fun.
Because on the one hand, if you're a working drummer, losing a huge gig like that and not having another huge gig to pivot to would be crucial to you. But also, he's Ringo Starr's kid. So, and
Yeah,
he's been with Who for what, 25 years now or something?
at least, yeah.
So he's okay,
Oh,
right?
he's perfectly fine. And he was also, as you said, in Oasis for about 4 or 5 years there at one point. And I don't know that that version of Oasis ever toured America. Looking back, I think they did like some festivals, but I don't think they ever did a proper tour with Zach because I saw them with Alan White and Steve White filling in for Alan White, and then the next time I saw him, it was the guy after Zach, and so I'm fairly certain they never came over, but they were touring in the rest of the world with Zach for all those years, and that was a good time to be in Oasis.
Was there ever a bad time to be in Oasis?
Not really, I don't think so. They
I was everywhere at some point. They were kind of
yeah.
on the top of whatever they were doing.
Hmm. I mean, they did the early 2000s when they became less and less relevant here. They were still doing stadiums everywhere else in the world. So, I mean, and this tour is just going to be. Did you see the Adidas ad they just released?
No.
There's a 3-minute Adidas commercial with the Gallagher about for Oasis. It came out today, this morning,
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
it's just gonna wind. It's just like I watched it and was like, oh my god, that tour is gonna be so insane.
I just woke up. The only
Really?
thing I see this morning is you.
Yeah.
It
Sorry.
was a long day.
Hmm.
So 3 minutes is epic in a
Yeah, I'm
commercial.
sure there'll be a shorter version for broadcast television, maybe, or maybe not even. Who cares? It's just, but online, it looks great. It does a great job of getting people who are already incredibly fired up even more so.
I mean, that's a Super Bowl level commercial, and there's no
Yeah.
sporting events around it, and they're a sports shoe company, and they were like, whatever.
It does, Liam's always been an Adidas man. What are you going to do?
I saw him in something else, and I'm trying to remember what it was, but my brain is just blanking. But there was some weird new I don't know if it was a commercial or a promo video, but it seemed really. I'm not going to remember it now. Shoot, somebody posted it, and I just saw it real quick on an Insta story. But I guess they're in full promo mode, and it's huge.
Yeah,
Like big names, big numbers, big productions. We're going to start seeing a whole lot of videos coming from them because that's what the world is now.
Oh yeah,
All
I'm
internet
sure.
video.
And I mean, every time you see a rumor about they'll add dates for 26, I can't imagine why they wouldn't. They're going to get out there and remember what it's like to be in the biggest band on the planet again, and think, yeah, let's just keep going there.
I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a tour manager for a band, one of those bands that's like the package tour that comes through every single summer. And they said that it has been a bloodbath across the whole country, ticket sales wise, for them, and the other bands in their genre, like this, not specifically ZZ Top, but like the ZZ Tops, who the Leonard Skinner that come through every single summer. They managed to sell really well at amphitheaters across the country year after year after year after year. Those people are not coming out. They're not buying tickets. You still have the Oasis, the Beyonce, the Metallica, the big popular stadium tours are still selling a ton of tickets, but the nuts and bolts, the bread and butter of the concert system is really cracking hard right now.
Yeah, I mean, the housing market, it's all the same stuff. It's all the same. What changed in the last 6 months to ruin the economy? I can't imagine.
You and me both. Yeah. This is where it really does trickle down. I think
if there was an ounce of political stability, especially where the economy is concerned, then we'd all be having a very different summer.
This just hurts my heart for the concert industry in general, because that's, those are my people. And
it's terrible.
As you and I both know, radio is wonderful, but it's also famous for being very unstable. And we all walk in and hope our card keys work every day, because that's just kind of the nature of the beast. So the live music concert community is always my fallback, and I still keep one foot in the door there. And now that they're struggling, it's like, now what am I going to do?
It's tough, man. I mean, it's just, I know everything's cyclical and everything goes away and comes back around, but it doesn't make it any easier when you start to see things tapering off the way they are. I've just noticed a ton of ads that pop up for, they're bundling concerts. Everywhere you go, you can buy tickets to 6 shows for the price of 2 and stuff. And it's like, oof, not good.
This Live Nation all-in $30 ticket sale has been going on for weeks now. That thing used to be like a 1 or 2 week, get them while you can. And now it's like, still on sale.
No, it's terrible. It's absolutely awful.
Am I going to be like, Nikki Blakk, you want fries with that? Pretty soon? I don't know.
You'll be Nikki Blakk. Hey kid, offer them fries with that. You'll be the manager, if nothing else.
I will. I'll be like, I've got a college degree. I'm management material. At least assistant manager. Key holder. Make me a key holder.
Anything. Just give me some modicum of control.
Oh God, it's the scariest.
Yeah.
Last but not least on the Zack Starkey. So because of all of his interviews and his press things, did you see the quote where he was like, I was talking to my dad about this, and he said it's always been a shame that the little man is in charge of the Who.
Yeah. Doesn't like the way the little man runs the band. When Ringo Starr thinks of you as a little guy, wow. Yeah. I mean, it is funny, like, and Ringo and Moon were very close. Obviously, they were like brothers. I mean, Keith Moon was Zach's godfather. He taught him how to play drums. And so, he and Ringo were the best of friends. And so I'm sure Ringo's issues with Daltrey go back 60 years. As long as he knew Keith and was hearing stories, I'm sure he was like, oh, God.
Wow.
Because, Keith Moon and Roger Daltrey famously clashed on a regular basis.
So at this point, like, I kind of love this. I did not have this beef on my bingo card, but, I love I love the rock star battles, and
Yeah.
no one
Well,
has to
it's
not
not
speak
really a
English
beef
right
with
now.
Ringo. For Ringo, you don't have a beef with Ringo for two reasons. One, he's vegan, and two, it's Ringo Starr, so he's going to offer you a plant-based hot dog and say peace and love.
Oh,
But he'll do it with a little bit of an eye cut. That's as much as he's going to get into it with anybody.
so British snark and wit is
Yeah,
going to be the extent of all Beatle-based beefs from here on out.
and everybody
I say,
knows
oh,
you actually
beef.
and yeah, and you don't actually mess with Daltrey because he grew up. He was literally a street fighting kid in a gang, and he loves to knuckle down. So no one's gonna get in Daltrey's face.
Oh, and I
He'll still throw a punch.
and I said that was going to be the last thing, but I forgot about this thing. Is that in the press, Pete Townsend made it sound like he didn't want to tour, and
Yeah,
then Roger was like, "Well, if Pete says he doesn't want to tour, then I don't want to be out there with the guy who doesn't want to tour." And it to your point about how little they speak, like clearly, it's to the point where not only are they not speaking, but their people aren't speaking because
one of those Zach quotes was he said the Who are the weirdest band ever. You got one guy who treats it like it's an art project, Townsend, and he said, and then you got a guy who's a street brawler. I mean, like they should have never been in a band together in the first place, in a weird way. So I mean that dichotomy's always been there. That's always been the pulse of that band is, Pete lays out the course and comes up with the vision and writes the songs. And then Daltrey gets a hold of them and tries to steer things back more to his way of thinking. And, when it works, it's as great a band as has ever been. And then, but for the last, Pete, I remember Townsend gave an interview probably 20 years ago, maybe even 25 years ago. And he said, we're like one of those cruises, like a reunion cruise. We go out every few years. Good to see old friends. We have a good time. He said, but I'm not kidding myself that we're still a relevant, forward thinking band. And this is, I mean, honestly, at least 20 years ago. And so to which I say, man, props for self awareness, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, I think the bands that cross themselves up are when they just won't admit what they are anymore, or they can't see it, or they don't want to, you know, and you can still make new albums, but if you think that your fans are going to care 50 years in, that's really, I mean, Metallica and U2 are the bands that like they somehow manage to maintain their relevancy, within their own fan base. I'm not talking about in the rest of the world, their own fans still, because, the Rolling Stones fans, all the many tens of millions of them and all the generations, did they all go listen to Hackney Diamonds a lot? Probably not. It's a good record too.
they should have.
But if Metallica says we have a new album, those people are going to go get that record. U2's putting out a record next year. It's going to matter to U2 fans. And so that's a pretty neat trick. And I think Pete Townsend recognizes like we just don't have that.
So, as the drumming expert, do you think it's going to make a difference at all then if we have Roger Daltrey's solo band drummer? Will that
Sure.
throw off the balance?
It won't matter to the people who are going to see him. Anybody that's going to see that band now just wants to, they know it's like, I got one last chance to see him, and Daltrey still sings great and Pete still plays great. And why not, for the, for the people that are really, really invested in how the band plays together, of course it'll be different. It's like Zach pulled off the miraculous. I'm a lot like Keith Moon. I'm as close to Keith Moon as anybody can get. But people who've been seeing the Who for a long time didn't actually ever see Keith Moon. So they see a reasonable recreation of Keith Moon. And now it's going to be at best one more generation removed from the reasonable recreation of Keith Moon. And so, I don't know anything about this drummer. I can't imagine he's not going to be just fine, you know. But for people who are really, really obsessive about these things, yeah, they'll nitpick him, and it's tough to be. It's it's the worst thing in the world is to try to replace a drummer in a band who's got a unique feel, and all the great drummers, that's what makes them great. They don't sound like it. They just have their own vibe. And so anybody that steps in is just automatically, several steps behind, because feel individually and then feel within a group, that's the hardest thing. That initial chemistry, bands in their early days when they develop and figure out who they are, that initial chemistry that's the magic of bands. That's truly the alchemy. And you can't recreate that 60 years after the fact with a new guy. I mean, you can make it sound good, but it's never going to feel the same, you know. That's I didn't see U2 at the Sphere, but they just did those shows without Larry Mullen Jr. They had for the first time ever, they had another guy on stage. So I didn't see it, and I haven't really seen any videos, but I would imagine there were people going like, something's just different here. It's just, yeah, the Bono sounds great, the songs sound the same, but there's an intrinsic, and that is a band that's all chemistry. I mean, they're 65 years old and they've all been in a band for 50 years together. It's next to impossible to imagine it ever working quite the same with a new drummer.
And I mean, that's the reason that Led Zeppelin is over and
Yeah.
Rush was over, and
it's the reason that those legacies, Led Zeppelin's legacy, they might have been fine, with a different drummer. Like they were thinking about Tony Thompson at one point, who was a great drummer. But I mean, we will never know what would have happened with someone else. So all we can talk about is what we do know. And the reason their legacy never, ever, ever took a hit was because they never messed it up by trying it with someone else.
They never went full Black Sabbath or Kiss or,
No.
all of the bands that we love, but
Yeah.
have your years where nobody's wanting that.
I mean, I'm when, and speaking of the Who, when they brought Kenny Jones in to replace Keith Moon, a lot of people gave him grief. I thought it was actually, if you're going to do it, that's the way to do it. Get someone who doesn't play anything like Keith Moon so that you can move forward with new music. And they did make some pretty good records with Kenny Jones. And he was perfectly fine on the old stuff, but he's just not, it was an intentional move to have a guy that's not going to be compared to Keith Moon all the time. I mean, maybe I'm biased. Drummers and singers are the two. Everyone else can fake it. Everybody else can get away with it. I mean, everybody else can match a tone, and you can match a vibe and a playing style closely enough that the average fan isn't going to notice. But the average fan will absolutely notice a different singer, and he will absolutely feel a different drummer, whether he can acknowledge it in real time or not. But it's drummers and singers are the toughest things to replace.
So the only band still active longer than the Who, I think, if I count back the days, the Rolling Stones. They just announced that they've been in the studio since April.
Yeah.
And they still had songs in the can that Charlie Watts had played on, and stuff from the Hackney Diamonds session that I guess didn't make the album that they're now developing. And they've got 13 songs, and the Rolling Stones are going to have another album cycle in 26. And I'm guessing a tour will follow, because why bother putting out an album? And they're all going to be touring at 85, which is
it's awesome. I mean, it's 85 is today's 85 is the old 65, I guess. Hell, I don't know. I mean, it's pretty incredible. But I thought Hackney Diamonds was a really solid record, and they said at the time we have a lot of stuff we had to make some tough choices. So I'm not surprised. I think it's fantastic. I think that when Charlie died and people were saying, why would they keep going? And it's counterintuitive. Like, everybody has this idea that once you get the gold watch, just kick back, man, chill. But being in the Rolling Stones is not a job. It's way beyond that. It's not. Why would you, if you have a choice of, I'm going to be bouncing around doing private things and having a normal life for 12 months a year, or I'll do it for 10 months a year, and the other 2, I'll go play stadiums.
Yeah.
I don't know a musician on earth who's going to not go, yeah, I'll do that for as long as I possibly can. It's very real when people say, I hope to die with a guitar in my hands. It's like, that's the one thing that you can't replicate otherwise in life. What are they going to do? Go put on some, VR glasses and simulate playing Wembley Stadium? No, just keep doing it. It's fucking awesome. They just keep going.
And if you retired from, I don't know, selling cars for 50 years, wouldn't you still like to go be a rock star?
Yeah, it's whatever you're doing. It's like, that's still the coolest thing, especially when it's it's whatever your dream. I mean, it's easy to overlook these things, but whatever your dream was as a little kid, if you end up living that life and being the biggest and best at it of all time, you're like McCartney. I've never met Paul McCartney. I know a lot of people that have. And one thing everybody says is, if he walks into the room and sees a piano, he immediately just goes over and he can't not play a piano if he sees one. And he doesn't sit down and sing Hey Jude. He starts immediately trying to find a melody. He's just constantly looking for the next song. Why would he ever stop doing that?
God, I hope he
He's
doesn't.
he's not gonna.
I was at Bridge School benefit
Hmm.
rehearsal day, and it was the one that Paul McCartney and Tony Bennett did a crossover set.
Yeah. Oh
And
wow.
so next thing you know, everybody's like whispering around backstage, and I'm like, "What's going
Yeah.
on?" And it's Paul McCartney. He just like he did exactly what you said. He walked into the venue and was like, "Oh, there's the piano," and he just walked on stage and started playing
Yeah.
and just kept playing. And everybody's like, it's a rehearsal day, so we don't have anything to do because everything's done. We're just waiting for the bands to show up and play. And so we all just like started crowding the stage, and we're all just sitting there, like literally at the
Yeah.
feet of Paul McCartney while he like noodles on the piano.
It's nuts. It really is. I mean, and
He's
that's the way Keith is. That's the way all those guys are. It's just constantly looking for something. It's like you have a moment where you're struck by inspiration, or you have a moment where you're eating a pimento cheese sandwich. It's like I think I'd take the inspiration with my sandwich. Thanks. Why stop?
You saw the Stones on the Hackney Diamonds tour, right?
No, I saw them last in 2022 with Steve Jordan's first tour, but I did not see them on Hackney Diamonds.
I saw him at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, and it was
Hmm.
amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. It was. Well, I saw them. It was just 3 or 4 months after Charlie died, and so it was still very emotional. Like when they came out and did the Charlie bit, Keith still. It wasn't their first show of that tour; it was third or fourth, but he was just absolutely had tears coming down his face, and he and Mick were just holding hands as they talked about Charlie. And everybody, everyone you're looking around, everybody's just tears are welled up, and then they continued the show and just played like they were 20 years old. It was fantastic. I couldn't believe. I mean, the best I ever saw the Stones was in 2015, amazingly, and we toured with them in '95 in Europe and did a dozen shows or so, and they were good that year. I mean, no question about it. But in 2015, they came out and Keith and Ronnie had both gotten they were completely sober, and I'd never seen them like that. And it was I stood at the soundboard the whole show just like my mouth open, like what am I listening to? It sounded like 72 Rolling Stones. Like there were some grooves and some things they hit. And I talked to Chuck Leavell. He came on my radio show the day before, and he said, "This is the best we've ever sounded since I've been with them," which was going back to Steel Wheels. He said that on the air, and then we got to the commercial break, and I said, "No, so seriously, how was it?" And he goes, "No, I'm not saying that. It was." He goes, "They're sober. Ronnie and Keith are trying to outdo each other, but they're still blending so well." He was laughing about it, but he said, "It's kicking everyone's ass. It's incredible," and then it was absolutely the case. And so, but that show in 2021 was real close. I mean, it was just outstanding, start to finish. And they played Shattered, which they hardly ever play. So that was cool too.
Which is the big radio hit still.
Hmm. They just never, it had been, I think they play it like once a year at most. And then they did that night. I was so excited.
God, it's been too long since I talked to you. There's so much going on. Did you see the preview for Deliver Me from Nowhere?
No, I saw that it was out, but I haven't watched it.
Oh, Jeremy Allen White
Hmm.
is. I'm in all sincerity. I think he's like headed for the Oscar nomination on this one, depending on whatever
Really?
other movies come out. And honestly, it's been a pretty slow year for movies so far.
Yeah. Wow.
Uh, he is just really embodies Bruce as well as you can, and not be Bruce,
Yeah.
and not be doing like a comedic impersonation of him.
Yeah. Right. I'll check
Like,
it out. I'll see it, and I'll probably go see the movie. Why
yeah.
not?
Tell me what
Yeah.
you think. I really want to know, because I was like, clearly this movie is a love story between Bruce and his manager.
Yeah. Okay.
Like there's a whole narration, and then underneath the narration, like all the poignant, like there is a woman involved, but all the poignant scenes are Bruce and his
Yeah.
manager. And I'm like,
It's funny.
you know what? It's a long-standing relationship he's had,
Yeah.
and it kind of has been the everything.
Yeah.
You know, it does make sense. It's a rare occasion that someone's manager is a main character in their biopic, but here we are.
Um, yeah, I guess it's a rare occasion that people stick with management, all the way. But it's funny because when you look at the artists who do, and it's like, oh yeah, they're these icons. It's always a almost always a connective tissue is, oh yeah, they had the right person and they stayed with the right person. And plenty of people get rid of the right person because they're stupid.
Well, and the right person from the beginning, I think,
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big, I know it's weird for me to bring up Barbara Streisand as an example, but man, her autobiography was so good.
Yeah.
And she,
Hey, she's the only artist to have a #1 album in 6 different decades, and she's about to put out another one. She had a #1 in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, aughts, teens, and she's putting out a record this decade. She might have a #1 in 7 different decades.
I'm 100% sure she will.
I was going to say, actually, it will go #1. Who's going to outsell Barbara Streisand first week out?
Absolutely. Plus her whole fan base, not only being huge, but they're going to buy records.
Yeah.
They're just going to buy it.
And I bet as the buildup is coming, you'll be hearing about it. She'll have there'll be at least one unquestionable, what a great song. They'll put it out and then, yeah, boom. It's crazy.
The thing that stuck out to me the most about her autobiography, and there's a lot, is that her manager got her creative control from the jump. Her very first contract had creative control on it. And she only had
back then, that's like impossible.
For a woman in the 60s, like what?
That's
and
nuts.
She's had it her whole life on almost everything. And in the handful of like movie instances when she was new in the movie, just getting going from stage to screen, there were some instances where she didn't have control. And in her autobiography, she's like, and this is what happens.
Yeah.
She's like, I tried, but didn't have the control. And here we are.
I heard someone described once as a genius at being themselves. And that's how she really, like, if she knows one thing, it's Barbara Streisand. And she knows what people expect, what her strengths are. Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
I was listening to her book, and I remember you telling me that in your book, you had to read the audiobook word for word. It was like a legal thing.
Yep, absolutely.
And her book has all this kind of like meandering, oh, and then this happened, and then she goes into a whole other story, and then there's just so much like random Brooklyn-ish turns of phrase and things that just get thrown in that I'm like, I am 99% sure that she did the audiobook first and that somebody just transcribed what she read and made it the book, because it wouldn't
surprise me.
It doesn't sound at all like she's reading her book.
Yeah. That makes sense. And like you said, if that's what she wanted to do, publishers would line up to say, sure, go for it.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, 60-year fan base.
Pretty good run.
Anything else going on, or should we call it a day? I think it's we're kind of at that mark.
I'm trying to think if anything's happening of note. No, I mean, of course I draw a blank, but I have a trailer to watch and you have a trailer to watch, and then we'll reconvene next week and see what we think.
Perfect.
How about the Indiana Pacers coming out of nowhere to be at a game 7 against the Thunder right now? I know you probably stopped the minute the Warriors were out. You don't care, but this has been an incredible NBA Finals.
To be fair, I didn't care before the Warriors were in.
Okay, all right, very good.
Because basketball season is basically all year now. It's like preseason starts in what, August, September or something. I don't know.
It's not. It's more like
finals are like 2 months.
They do need to do a couple things. They should shorten the regular season truly by 10 games, and they should start the season on Christmas Day. Like, we don't need basketball in November when the finals are in the late June. Just go December to June. That's half your year, and that would be enough. Yeah.
Give me a break. Just a break. Come on. But to be fair, my cousin Thorpe worked for the Indiana Pacers. I have a ridiculous amount of family on my mom's side from Indy. So the Pacers have always been my number 2 team. Sorry, Sacramento.
Well, Sunday, game 7 Sunday, it's never too late to hop on the bandwagon for real. Get in there.
If there's one thing I love about basketball, it's the last 2 minutes of any game.
They make it easy. You can just watch the end usually, but game sevens are different. I don't think we're going to see. I would imagine because this is two of the younger teams in the league. I bet it's going to be kind of sloppy. Like they're going to all be really, really clenched, and it'll just be who makes the fewest mistakes. But we'll see.
We'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see. Okay. Go Indy then. I'll
Yep.
talk to you next week.
All right. See you.